This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, September the 23rd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, David Williams. He's producing the program. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a shout to get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. All right, so best time of year for baseball fans, especially when your team's going to play some October baseball, like the Toronto Blue Jays will. Open up a 3-game set against the rival Boston Red Sox this evening in Toronto. Last 6 games are in Toronto, where they've had a very good record. So, yes, they're going to make the playoffs, but the bye is really required here. They got, I think, the second or third oldest pitching staff in the league, and it's starting to show. So they need that bye to really take a swing at going further this year. What do you think? All right, a couple of random baseball notes. On this date, 1979, St. Louis Cardinals legend Lou Brock steals his 938th and final base of his career, second only still to Rickey Henderson, major league record, which you can put this one to bed, 1,406. And now we've got someone, Shohei Ohtani, who's got 50 home runs and 50 steals in the season. Of course, the only person to ever do it. In 1988, Jose Canseco, became baseball's first player to steal 40 and hit 40. So the game has changed dramatically. And obviously, NHL back in action. Preseason hockey is upon us. On this date in 1992, Manon Rhéaume became the first female to play in an NHL exhibition game. Played goalie for the Tampa Bay Lightning. 9 shots, 2 goals in the first period. All right, let's keep going. So I heard Jim Dinn yesterday, he's talked about this in the past, the need to shore up campaign finance rules and campaign finance reform. So he's proposing a cap, which is good. So there is no cap here at this moment in time for political parties who receive donations from corporations, unions, or individuals. We're the only, we're the second province in the country to allow such shenanigans to take place, Saskatchewan being the other one. You know, when asked, Tony Wakeham, leader of the PCs, would say that he supports a review of the issue. Premier Hogan, John Hogan, says that he doesn't think it's an important issue for the voters. He says democracy costs money. People have to get their message out there. I don't think that's a very accurate read of the political landscape, that this is not important to people. Because you hear it all the time. Certainly I hear it all the time. When a massive contract is let, first thing people think, and the first bit of research they do is, I wonder how much that company has donated to the current government. I mean, in successive governments, whether it be the Tories or the Liberals, they've received pretty serious donations from individuals, corporations, and unions, many of which would be looking for grants from the government, different funds out of different pots of money from the government, contracts from the government. So I don't know why all political parties can't figure out that this is required. Even if it's just perception, perception becomes reality in politics. If the optics are, well, Company A got a grant because they gave to the political party that's sitting in the current seat of government, it is an important issue. And yes, democracy does cost money. And yes, democracy can be messy. But it's not really incumbent on the rest of us who aren't interested in making political donations to see what goes on. If you need to get your message out there, there are a variety of ways to do that. And yes, you're going to have to buy maybe expensive ads on television and radio. And yes, you can use your social media accounts, which is extremely inexpensive. But no need for campaign finance reform? I don't know where that comes from. Well, I do, because money makes it easier. And I don't think the bulk of us are really concerned with how easy it is to get your message out there. So anyway, you want to take it on? We can do that. I've been talking about this one for years. All right. And people will be hearkening back to the fiasco that was the 2021 election. We all know what happened. So elections NL, thankfully, they say they've got new processes in place, new procedures, a new management group here. So some of the things regarding access, which is important. They've increased the number of advanced polling stations by 30% and special ballot stations by 20%. They've also got some software that allows them to really get a bird's eye view of what's happening in terms of electors sending in information with respect to registration or applications. Integrity and faith and trust in the elections is pretty serious stuff. And let's hope that all the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed, and that Travis Woolley, who's the Chief Electoral Officer, and his team have got this figured out, because 2021 and the hangover from is very, very real. Let's keep going here. in the category of what? Alison Coffin, former leader of the NDP, and of course lost that controversial election last time around, went through the court cases. The result was John Abbott, who won based on the count at the time, has now resigned. So that was part of some sort of deal struck between Ms. Coffin and others and the provincial government. Okay. So she's running again. I'm not surprised. And this time running as an independent candidate, which I think is welcome in many corners. People like the thought of independent candidates, I think. But she's running in 2 different districts. This is unbelievable. So our province is first. I'm not blaming anything on Alison Coffin. If there's no rules prohibiting her from doing exactly that, why not? So she's running in Carbonear, Trinity Bay de Verde and Harbour Grace, Portagrave. So apparently there is no rule addressing this particular issue. Let's change that. You know, don't really enjoy going down the hypothetical road, but what happens if you had a really seriously popular government looking at swooping back in a majority fashion, and then you had one independent candidate who was uber popular and is going to be elected in a landslide in one voting district and maybe in multiple? Who says that someone can't run in 5 seats? So you can have one person be the official opposition in a bizarre, crazy, hypothetical world. But if there's no rules prohibiting it, then maybe, just maybe, we should close that loophole. So we talk about democratic reform and campaign finance reform. This is a pretty simple one. And then there's questions, and I think rightfully so, being asked about, let's just say that Ms. Coffin is successful in both districts. Does that mean she gets 2 paychecks? So running in 2, and we apparently haven't figured out to put a rule in place that prohibits that. And whether or not you think it's a required rule, seems to me probably a very good idea to be only allowed to run in 1 district. But it's not Ms. Coffin's fault. There's no rules, so I guess that's that. All right, let's keep going. So we'll get through some of the comments being made by different politicians and their parties and their leaders. And this is yesterday, Tony Wakeham, leader of the Tories, regarding rural health care. I think to a man, to a woman, we all recognise the need to improve the system, and most certainly in rural parts of the province, rural parts of Canada. He's come forward with a couple of different pledges here. To provide health care for all of us by returning health care workers to communities. Okay. End the cycle of rural ER closures and diversions by hiring more ER doctors, nurse practitioners and nurses to ensure every shift is covered. What we really need on top of that is some actual details about what those incentives might look like. Because if we're being honest, a lot of the incentives that have been floated, whether it be for nurses who are on the casual list to move on to the permanent full-time list, very few took it up. Whether it be incentives for family doctors to move to more rural parts of the province, establish a full patient roster with huge financial incentives. And very few took it up, took the opportunity. So we need a bit more detail now, because it sounds great, but how does it actually get executed? Bring nurse practitioners and family doctors here and keep them here. Cover overhead support. Now, we've already heard from the NLMA that when the pilot program for nurse practitioners included overhead support, then, of course, the doctors wanted to, and they've been talking about that for years. Then to adopt the recommendation of the Registered Nurses Union and launch a province-wide program that brings registered nurses and nurse practitioners to rural, remote and underserved communities. Some of this would be in the world of locums, for instance, which is obviously a very good idea. And maybe, just maybe, that would help reduce our reliance on travel nurses at this moment in time. So that's part of the offerings. But look, it all sounds good. If we can do whatever we can to improve healthcare, the system, and close up the shortages in various disciplines, from family doctors to registered nurses to medical laboratory assistants, whatever the case may be, MRI technicians, the trick will be complicated in many rural parts of the province. Whether it be opportunities for the healthcare professionals' partner, children, housing, transportation. There's a lot to this. So I like having ideas as to try to improve the system, but we need some actual hard details, I would suggest, to see how manageable it could be. Your thoughts? All right. So again, rural. Okay, it just popped in my head. So for a rural vote, it's remarkable to me that we haven't heard much in the way of anything outside of the FFAW regarding the whole sea cucumber issue. Royal Greenland, one of the big processors, trying to buy sea cucumbers from a foreign vessel for 50 cents a pound versus the panel negotiated price of 69 cents. The protesters on the wharf kept it from happening. But while Royal Greenland was floating that idea, other small processors thought, well, maybe we can do it too, right? Improve the bottom line. This is a problem. And it won't just be sea cucumbers if the province doesn't do something about this. So, again, for politicians, on either side of the aisles to talk about how they would shore that up to protect the system, albeit pretty flawed no matter how you slice it. But we can't have this persist into the future with different species. We're just creating what is already a very troubled industry with yet more trouble because we don't make sure that the companies abide by the rules inside their license. Haven't heard them talk about that. Let's stick with the water. So the political parties are being asked about their support or not for the proposed National Marine Conservation Area off the southwest coast. It's massive, over 6,500 square kilometres. So the PC say that they oppose possible restrictions on fishing and mining in the area. Here again, and this is not just about the Tories, this is about the whole concept of the conservation area. What we need to know is exactly what's being proposed and exactly what will and will not be allowed. For instance, inside the fishery, my understanding in the commercial fishery is it's not banning commercial fishing, it's restricting the type of gear that could be used. So nothing can be dragged across the bottom. If that's not accurate, then someone try to set me straight. But that's how I understand it. Then there's all the things like recreation, scientific research, sustainable use. Included in these MPAs, or that's a marine protected area, inside these conservation areas, there's also the possibility, if you look at other areas, where there can be zones inside the conservation area that will allow for X, Y, and Z. Now, the Aquaculture Industry Association is vehemently opposed to this. They say that it's scaring off potential investment, scaring off potential expansion of open pen fin fish farming that already exists and has for decades here in this province. So, what specifically is allowed and what is not allowed? Now, they do point to the fact that they're doing, scientific research and the ability to deal with Indigenous communities. All of this managed by Parks Canada, as a matter of fact. But no examination of economic impact, which should be included here. So what is exactly allowed? The NDP points to some of the misinformation, and the Liberal Party says it supports marine conservation, but it cannot come at a cost to the fishery, aquaculture industry, and those who make their livelihood from the waters of the province's south coast. I would just ask this base question, and this is not to be mean-spirited, but what do any of the parties know about the intricacies, the actual details of what is and what is not allowed? Because that kind of plagues a lot of conversations we have. There's just tidbits of truth, tidbits of inaccuracies. Next thing you know, we have a very muddied water picture, and nobody really knows what's up or what's down. So anyway, we'll take it on. Also, regarding aquaculture, I said I'd do this for the folks. Now, what we also need to hear from the Aquaculture Association is exactly what they think the future of open pen fin fish farming looks like, given all the mass die-offs, and what that costs the companies, and what it costs insofar as environmental damage goes. So there is a protest coming up, let's see here, Fish Plant Road in Burgeo, Thursday, this is September 25th at 2 p.m. Here's a quote from the demonstration organisers. "This isn't just about dead fish. This is about the air we breathe, the water we depend on, and the future of our coast. We cannot allow industrial salmon farming to destroy our environment while government and corporations look the other way." Whether or not you think that's an accurate comment or concern from those particular demonstrators, that's what they're offering. So it's Thursday at 2 p.m., Fish Plant Road in Burgeo, if that's something that interests you. All right. Also, announcements yesterday, and plenty of conversation about wildfire fighting capabilities. Premier Hogan talking about, making part of the legislation to deal with things like compensation for volunteer firefighters, members, search and rescue personnel, doubling the tax credit for those responders as well. And then they talk about aerial capabilities. Premier Hogan said a re-elected Liberal government will get a heavy lift helicopter and 2 Bird Dog aircraft. We all know and talk about the 5th water bomber, and it sat there for years after being damaged in 2018. In April, there was a contract let to de Havilland to repair it to the tune of some $17 million. But they did not make any mention of any more money slated for what they're calling the Atlantic Wildfire Centre, which will be built at the Gander International Airport. So they talk about programs for training, equipment, and other resources at that particular site. So I would also throw in, are we looking at how effective the Fire Raptor helicopters were? Are we looking at some of the drone research being conducted in British Columbia for those Thunder Wasps and what role they may play into the future? Also, when we talk about rebuild, I get a lot of communication coming from folks in the CBN in particular talking about the rebuild and the worries and the time and all these things. But also when we talk about replanting, because if you've seen the visuals, it's just a black barren landscape. And replanting will be part of rebuilding here. So I wonder how keenly we focus in on replanting with aspen versus some of the other conifers, which burn so hot and so quick. So if you look around and you read a little bit about it, so it seems like it's a more fire resistant than other species. It's not fire resistant in full, but it's more. They talk about the high moisture content. So unlike the conifers, which are extremely dry and extremely flammable, aspens hold their moisture in the leaves and the bark. And the canopy is much higher off the ground, which doesn't lead to that ground fire getting all the way up a tree because they don't have the branches to latch onto. So they talk about resilient root systems and the clonal growth, slower fire spread. So they can actually put forward and present as fuel breaks. So is that part of the replant when we talk about the rebuild? Your thoughts? All right. So you see the Americans are putting out a $100,000 visa application fee for the H-1B visa. This is an opportunity for Canada. I mean, tech talent is in high demand around the world. So for companies, and some of the big ones that'll be impacted by this, the Apples and Amazons and Googles of the world, we know we have a bit of a dearth of tech talents in the country. So for those professionals around the world that look at this and say $100,000 fee, and maybe some small and medium-sized business also look at this and say, that really hampers our opportunity to grow. So maybe, just maybe, and hopefully Canada can take advantage of this. Because $100,000 visa application, and plus, you talk about misinformation and what's going around, that might be a big opportunity for us. And I'll add to it, it'd be nice to know if we've changed some of the mandate for the office that the province opened in Boston. It was all about economic opportunity, partnerships, and the like. But academic brain drain, healthcare professionals, tech talent, that really should be part of that conversation in Boston as well. If you agree, fine. If you don't, you can also call on that. A couple of very quick ones. Oh, boy. So we were told at the Charlie Kirk Memorial that there was a big autism announcement coming the day following, and it's out there. Here's a quote from POTUS. I think we found an answer to autism. How about that? Autism. We won't let it happen anymore. They're drawing the link between the growing rates of autism in the United States to acetaminophen, to Tylenol. So I'm not a woman and I've never been pregnant, but having a wife who's been pregnant twice and talking about access to pain relief, it has long been the case that both the American and the Canadian Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology have said that acetaminophen is the safest option for pain relief. Not because I say so, because they say so. And then you're going to say to me, oh, you got this blind faith in Big Pharma. No, I don't. No, I don't. There's absolutely justifiable reasons why people have very little faith in Big Pharma. But to draw those links, so basically blaming it on the mothers, that if they took Tylenol during pregnancy, that they've increased the risk of their child to be autistic. It's causing great consternation. And look, again, the way it was presented, and talk about all the vaccines that are given at the same time or in close proximity to each other and what that means, and using absolutely made up numbers like 80 vaccines, and when the president says that I don't think the MMR should be given at one moment in time, not based on a study or citing any academic research, just say basically that's how he feels. This is going to be an issue inside the autistic community. Well, it already is. And for both the American and Canadian Societies of Obstetrics and Gynecology to immediately have to get out there and put their message back out there, citing copious amount of research and peer-reviewed studies about this exact topic. But here we are. You knew this was coming. You knew it was coming. I mean, just look who's at the helm of HHS. And so there you go. Oh, and for those of you who care or who watch late night TV, Jimmy Kimmel back on the air tonight. ABC's reinstated the program. Kimmel back on the air. And even how he was suspended for, I guess, about a week here now, based on the most egregious overreaction to innocuous comments on a comedy show. Never seen the like. Anyway, you want to take it on? And yes, we can talk about the Upper Churchill. I was going to dig heavily into Michael Wilson's document that I much appreciate the fact he sent it along. I got widely distracted yesterday by something that I didn't get a chance to do as much as I want. I read it until I fell asleep in bed last night, so that's still on my agenda, but it can be on ours as a caller today. Insofar as support or opposition to it, we can talk about it. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That can only happen when you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning on line number 4. Say good morning to the independent candidate running in Carbonear, Trinity Bay de Verde and Harbour Grace Portagrave. It's Alison Coffin. And good morning, Alison. You're on the air.
Well, good morning, Patty. I heard you were talking about me.
I was. And what I'll say, just to summarize, is I just pointed to
Sure.
the story itself and made a point that
Absolutely.
this is not to blame Alison Coffin for anything. This is about a glaring loophole in the rules. So I'm not insinuating you did anything wrong, but what I'll start by
No.
asking is, why? Why put your name on the ballot in two different districts? Is it just to hedge your bet?
No, not at all, not at all. For some very, very good reasons. The first one, and perhaps the most important one, was because I was asked to. I've been on the ground for a few weeks now, talking to people, and folks in the grocery store, and friends that I see at the mall are saying, and strangers are saying, Alison, you need to run again. And the feedback I'm getting is, we want an independent candidate in our district, and that happens to overlap in both of these districts. And I got 2 sets of nomination papers presented to me. So I said, why, if I can put my name into both, but why do I need to decide? Isn't it a much stronger form of democracy if the voters get to decide? So they now have the choice of voting for me or not voting for me, but they also have the alternative of an independent member. And I hear that resonating a lot throughout the province, but in particular in the people I've been talking to in the last little while. They are starting to move away from the party systems. They see that majority governments are pushing them around a little bit, and they feel like their voices are not being reflected in the way they want in decisions in the House of Assembly. So that's been kind of embraced, and the other part, I think the second part of this is we desperately need electoral reform. We had a electoral reform committee back in, Dwight Ball's days in 2016. And absolutely nothing came of that. Nothing at all. There was a committee, they had a meeting, there was some research done, but nothing. Then when I was in the House of Assembly, myself and Paul Lane were actually co-chairing another Democratic Reform Committee, which is a slightly different iteration of it with a broader mandate. And that, of course, dissolved when Andrew Ferry called the COVID election. And then John Hogan had multiple opportunities to go in and address some of the issues that became quite glaring in the COVID election. And John Hogan chose not to do that. So they've had 4 years to go in and open up the act and modernize it and make it, more accessible. Like, talk about changing the languages that election materials are available in, but also make it more reasonable for independent candidates to run, because right now the language is very much structured around the party system. Campaign finance reform. Once the act is open, everything is fair game, and we can talk about doing campaign finance reform there. So the fact that we haven't had reform, and the opportunity has been there during the last 3 general elections, and nothing has happened, sometimes you kind of need to push the boundaries a little bit. And I'm doing this well within the law, and I'm doing with the support of my nominators and the support of the people I'm talking to on the ground. And they're saying push the boundaries, and they know that if I happen to get in there in any capacity whatsoever, that I am going to push for the reforms. I'm going to push for the reforms that the people need. This is not about Alison Coffin. This is about the people needing their voice better reflected in the House.
All these issues regarding democratic reform, campaign finance reform, I'm almost tired of talking about it because I've been doing it for years. Let's just, look down the road, and I don't have a crystal ball. I have no idea what the results of the election will be. If you are successful in both districts, do you think you could adequately represent 2 districts?
Yes, absolutely. Put this in context for you now. An MHA has 2 primary jobs. They have to be present in the House of Assembly to pass legislation, to debate, to represent their constituents in the House of Assembly. Then they also have to represent their constituents on the ground. They have to be in the districts. They have to be bringing services and representing them on the ground in their districts. So the job of being in the House of Assembly, you only need to be present once. You could potentially debate twice, but you only need to hear a bill read once. You only need to hear someone else speak once. So the job of being in the House of Assembly is kind of duplicated in both districts. So then you have to work with your constituents. Now, running as an independent, I have no party obligations. So my time is not dedicated to party issues, so I can take all that extra time that I have, and that is a substantial amount of time, and I can dedicate that to constituency issues. And hypothetically, if I get in 2 districts, I'm going to have staff in both of those districts. So I think that that will certainly help support both of those. Now, I'm no stranger to working extra. The court case, I put so many hours into the court case and did all of that voluntarily. I'm routinely known for working twice as hard. So I think I can do this. And I think if this happens and it runs the course for 4 years, then over the course of the 4 years, we can tighten up the legislation and we can make it so that it is more fair and appropriate. And all that while, I'm going to be representing people.
I'm not trying to ask any questions to besmirch your decision or to plant any seeds of doubt. I'm just trying to, trying to figure out not only the motivation but the potential outcome here. And I guess what I'm getting at, right, you only need to hear the bill read once. You only need to participate in the debate once, regardless if you're representing 10 districts. But what happens when it comes down to advocating for? Because not every district gets everything they want. So even something as fundamental as road work, for instance, there might be distinct needs in Carbonear versus Harbour Grace, but you probably can't get everything on your wish list. So that's kind of what I'm getting at with adequately representing 2 districts, because not every district has the exact same needs. And they may have overlapping needs where we're going to have to pick one or the other possibly.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that we can do. We work with the constituents, and certainly, like if you had, say, 2 Liberal cabinet ministers, they're going to do exactly the same thing, and they're going to hash it out between one another, right? So why not have someone who is legitimately going to directly represent the people and talk to them directly? Like we know that the veterans is going to run all the way through both of these districts. That is an issue. We know that there needs to be water and sewer work that's done, so maybe we can talk together with municipalities and develop a plan that happens over the course of 4 years that works for everybody. These things are not black and white.
No.
I mean, when we talk about, especially as we roll up to, like, say, the party system where everything is very polarized and everyone has their opinion and this is what we have to do and we have to toe the party line. One of the just incredible benefits of being an independent is you can kind of see the little bits of good in all of that. And maybe even rise above it and act more as a mediator and a moderate voice and someone who's really throwing things ahead when you have polarizing opinions in other places that really hold back progress. So, this could be a whole new era of how we work in politics and make cooperation our government as opposed to polarizing political ideas or we just kind of oppose one another. It's like, there's good and bad on all the sides. Somewhere in between we should have a reasonable solution. Maybe I can be that voice.
Do you think this rule needs to change?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because I painted a picture off the top where, let's just say, for instance, and again, not even to talk about this election. So you've got a party that's super popular. The election is called. It looks like they're going to sweep back in majority fashion. You get an uber popular candidate who's very likely going to be electable in a handful of districts. You could have one person be the opposition. Right?
And you could have parties take advantages and say, hey, we got someone who's super popular and let's fire them in, 4 or 5 districts. So it absolutely can be abused. Let's roll back a little bit. What I have done in putting myself out there and saying, I've taken the rules and I've kind of pushed up against the boundary of the rules, but I'm still operating well within the rules, and I've done this. And I've actually improved democracy. I have given more people the choices that they want on the ballot. There we go. Simple as that. Both districts now have an independent voice that they like. Roll back to the COVID election. The same thing happened, and it's not been proven, but I think that it was very contrived. That election was contrived because we know that COVID was circulating, an extra contagious variant of it was circulating just the Christmas before. 2 weeks later, we call an election, and 4 weeks later, we're like, oh, we've got to shut everything down. And what happened in the context of that, we were left with a chief electoral officer that did not have any authority. We had a chief medical officer that didn't have any authority. We didn't have a sitting government, and the lieutenant governor and council also didn't have any authority. So we were driving through this election that had really no solution. And that caused more people to not be able to vote. Their democratic rights were violated. They didn't want to go to the ballot. There was voter apathy. People who wanted to vote couldn't get in. It was a much more egregious example of using the law to further a political agenda.
Yeah, no question.
So I think that loophole needs to be closed much quicker than the one that I have just perhaps identified. And, you know, if, for example, if people have said, well, Alison, you know, we like what you're doing and we like you pushing against this, and they vote me in, well, they can be guaranteed that I'm going to close that loophole, and I'm going to close the other loophole. I'm going to close the loopholes on campaign financing, because that needs to be done too.
Yeah, if the government of the day will cooperate. And, you know, again, I'm fascinated by this conversation, to be honest with you. Like, regardless of what people think of Danny Williams today, or regardless of what you thought about him when he was the Premier, at one moment in time, he had approval ratings into the 80s. Right? It's just the facts. So when they go back to the polls to win another majority, had they been using this rule, Williams, with his popularity at the time, could have ran in a bunch of Liberal districts, including his one out in Corner Brook, and who knows, maybe had 5 or 6 seats just in his name. I mean, it's wild that this is something that we have to talk about in 2025 in Canada. Anyway, final thoughts, Alison.
Pardon me?
I said final thoughts to you before I have to get going.
Oh, I'm not sure. I guess I'll probably tell you this. I am not accepting union or corporate donations. I am doing this all on your own. That is it. So, you know, lead by that kind of example. That's where I am at all.
Appreciate your time.
You chatting.
My pleasure. Take care, Alison.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, let's get the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Gerald, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning to you.
I'm calling to congratulate a young fellow from Corner Brook who came second in the Targa car race. His name is Devon Knight. And after 6 days of racing, he was a few seconds behind a professional race car driver who had won around 100 car races in all over North America.
Fantastic. Back when Targa first became a thing and first came to the province, we have to remember it was covered internationally. It was on Speed Channel. It was a big, big deal. I'm not so sure how popular it is these days, but give me the young fella's name once more, Gerald.
Devon Knight.
Devon Knight. Good for him. Do you happen to know how old Devon is?
26.
26. It's a cool competition. Now, there were some communities that really didn't like the fact Targa was coming to town, and we did have one tragic incident out in, I can't remember exactly what community, we were down the Burin Peninsula, I believe. But yeah, good on Devon. Cool stuff.
Yes.
It's a cool competition.
Oh, yes. There was a lot of professional drivers in there, and there was a lot of fellows from the United States and across Canada, and I think there was one person from Germany. So it's a pretty big deal.
Oh, no question.
Yeah, and for a young local fellow to be able to compete with him is pretty good.
I agree. And we've had some local competitors. Of course, Bob Gnu, who brought it here, his son Scott competed in Targa several times, and another couple of local drivers as well. The names kind of escape me at this moment. But yeah, good on Devon for getting in. And it's not just Devon either, to maintain the car and to run the race and to have your navigator on board. There's a lot to it. So good for him. I'm glad you told me about it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Gerald. Thanks for the call.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, what's that, a 3? Okay, line number 3. Heidi, you're on the air.
Hi. So I guess I just should say I've been on hold for 45 minutes, which it just shows that I'm really stressing how important it is that this situation, Harbour Grace, is closed. So regarding the dog's abuse. So I hope I do them justice now. The last time since we spoke, there was another check by the RCMP. They heard faint cries, but it was reported that everything was okay, obviously, because they're inside the home. Then there was a gunshot heard, and it took an hour for the response by the police. By that time, the owners had left their quads with the trailer, and no sounds have been heard since. So that's the first thing I'll mention. I also found out that the owners have been threatening people, telling them they know where they live. And the dogs can't be seen now, so it's difficult to even say what's happening behind closed doors. So this is almost even more upsetting than when you could see the dogs and that they were in distress. So yesterday I actually got a call back from She's an animal welfare consultant with the provincial government, Candace King. And she told me she couldn't disclose anything because any open investigation, because it's active, they can't tell us. They can't give us any information. So we were left to assume and hope that the right decisions are being made before these dogs are killed or suffer any more. So at what point can we demand answers or clarity when there's an investigation like that? What's your knowledge of that?
Well, I don't know if I have much in the way of knowledge on that one or not. Generally speaking, when there's an issue that's in the hands of law enforcement and or a case in front of the court, it's virtually impossible to get any information. We've tried, honestly, over the years. Even if we talk about trying to get an update on the status of arson investigation out in Central, mum's the word. So while things are still, quote-unquote, active, then law enforcement is very close-lipped.
Right, but she said it was open yesterday and that behind closed doors things were happening.
Yep.
But that's a lie because the RCMP told us yesterday that the investigation is closed and that the dogs weren't taken because it didn't meet the criteria or definition of distress. So I took it upon myself to go in and look up distress on the animal legislation laws. I forget what it's called. Anyway, distress means being in need of proper care, not just food, water, and shelter, but proper care. So that's a no. Being sick, injured, or abused, pain, suffering due to neglect, hardship, privation, or neglect. Neglect, tick. Insufficient space, next one, tick. Anxiety, tick. Are they being deprived of medical care or veterinary care? I guarantee it or not, tick. Unsanitary conditions, tick. Adequate exercise, probably not. And they're definitely being kept on premises with other animals that have an impact on the animal. So distress, clearly, they're ticking all the boxes. So how can they say that these dogs are not in distress? It's quite clear. So how can they close the case? I don't even understand. I don't get it. So I guess my call is to implore the public, stress how so important it is for people to put pressure on the mayor and the RCMP and Harbour Grace to get this properly investigated. Also, why didn't they take a SPCA rep with them to accompany the police so they could take pictures? They'd have proof. And then they also have experience to better recognize what a dog distress really means. I'm just livid today. I'm livid.
I understand. Look, when I saw the pictures, I was livid, and I guess I remain livid knowing that it has been rectified and those people don't have the dogs with them any longer to further abuse them. It's disgraceful. The images are heartbreaking.
And now it's inside the home. We have no idea what's happening inside. It's even worse, right? And it's closed. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Newfoundland, it's not good enough.
I agree with you. Let's see if I can't get some information. I've been running up against nothing but roadblocks, but we'll keep going and see what we can figure out here. And I really appreciate you making time for the show, Heidi.
And I really appreciate you taking time to listen to me and airing these concerns for these animals. Thank you.
Happy to do it. Stay in touch.
Okay, will do.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you haven't seen those images of what's going on with that one particular circumstance in Harbour Grace, it's worth a quick Google to see if you can find it. Although, X that, because it's only going to break your heart. Let's go ahead and take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Where should I go, David? Sometimes I don't keep an eye on the clock, so there you go. Line number one. Daryl, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Paddy. How you doing today?
Not bad, I suppose. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thanks, and thank you for having me on your show there. Paddy, I'm going to comment first. You had Alison Coffin on your show there, and people are concerned, like, where she's run two districts, if she could represent it properly. But look at the federal part. We only got 7 MPs covering the whole province, so why not on provincial level? You do the same thing. But on another note, as an independent, this is my opinion, that you represent the people versus tone a party line, and my opinion should be all independence, but that's my take onto it, because I think independent represents the people itself. Right?
I got no problem with independent candidates. Why would I? But your comment about 7 federal ridings, it's a bit different, because it's not, the concern is not about the geographical footprint. It's whether or not you could represent 2 different districts. If there's, say, for instance, some competing issues between the two, then you got to pick one. That's what I meant by that. Right. Not that it's the geography of it.
Oh, no. I understand totally where you're coming from, right? And so I just thought I'd just tweak it a bit and add my view pertaining to that. Yeah. And I wish everybody all the best in the election. I commend people for stepping up to the plate and running, considering what's happening this day and age and what you got to deal with behind the scenes and so forth. But on another note, Patty, what I'm not hearing from any politicians, either municipal, provincial, or federal, I'm hearing like, okay, making all these announcements. I'm not saying they're bad announcements. They're all good announcements. But in the long run, do cost money. So what I'm not hearing is that I'm not hearing anyone being innovative and creative, like come up with ways where you could probably generate money and yet not be a burden to the taxpayer. Like the easiest way, like generate revenue, from all levels, increase taxes. And that's a simple and easy way. Rather than being innovative and creative, like get your heads together and think, what can we do to generate money without being a burden to the taxpayers, and probably lower the tax base and whatever. So I'm not hearing any innovation or creativity in that way. And like I'll say for the record, the announcements, they're all good announcements. I'm not knocking that, but you got to come up with innovative, creative ways for revenue to come in without being support all these programs. Well, in the long run, hopefully you get a tax increase or whatever, but do it in a way that is not a burden to the taxpayer. And offer the amenities, but yet don't ways that you don't have to increase taxes to get the revenue coming back into the pot.
But no one's talking about jacking up taxes.
No. I don't mean it that way. But I'm just saying, like, for in the future, if you're running more of a deficit, I mean, if you keep running deficits and go more in debt, something got to give eventually. The bottom got to come out. But what I'm saying, be innovative, creative. What can we do to generate money going into the pot, either municipal, provincial, or federal, without being a burden on the taxpayer in general? I'm looking at for the future. That way we keep everything stabilized. Then you got money to fund healthcare, education, business, or, whatever the case may be in general.
Well, all the promises and additional spending and reducing the provincial portion of tax on electricity bills and tax cuts for small, medium-sized business and all these. All right. I mean, those things always play very, very well with the electorate. But at the exact same time, we really need some serious plans from all the parties about the level of debt and deficit. We just do. It's easy to make promises about spending more here, spending more there, cutting tax here, cutting tax there, reducing fees here, reducing fees. Look, that's all great. And people like those things, right? Why? Because it makes life a bit more, less expensive. But one of the biggest expenses in the province is trying to deal with the debt, to simply service the debt. So I really need the parties to start talking about that a bit more than just tell me about the good things and the additional spend we can make, because that comes with a consequence. It just does. If we're running a $626 million deficit today, which includes all the big tobacco money, and the net debt of the province is creeping up to $20 billion, that's got to get more of a focus from politicians. It just does. Whether or not people think that's less sexy than cutting taxes, yeah, you're right. Same thing, water and sewer isn't as big a deal in some people's minds as the asphalt above the water and sewer, but it's an important issue.
Right. No, exactly. And what sort of forgets me, he makes all these announcements now election time. And when you look at you're throwing out all this money doing this, okay, we're going to do that. How come this wasn't implemented before the election time? Because this is the process that's always been, and when it comes to elections. But what you're saying, you are right. So that's to my point, is that come up with different ways where you could have money coming in, service your debt, whatever, and still keep the same level of service, or even enhance it. So this is what we got to do. This is what you got to start coming up with. And that's why I like to hear them. I'm not hearing it from nobody on any political parties, from municipal right on up. So, yes, we can make announcements. Like I'll reiterate, yes, it's all good announcements. But we need the money to service that. So, yes, it's good we save on our power bill. The government's going to cut back. I think they won't generate, $75 million, whatever, for example. Okay, so come up with innovative ways where you could subsidize that without being the burden, and yet there's a benefit to the people itself. And that's what we got to look at.
Fair enough, Darryl. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, again, thanks, Patty, and all the best to you, and keep up the great work.
You too, pal. Bye-bye.
All the best. Thank you.
Let's keep going. Before we get to the news, let's go to line number 6. Good morning, Nick. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Welcome to the program.
I'm doing great, Patty. I just wanted to let everyone know, of course, everyone knows about my Newfoundland word searches. I've just expanded to a new word search covering Canada, coast to coast.
Oh, good for you. When did this, has it already been printed and launched?
Oh, it's already out now. I've got it out in Costco, Chapters, and Kohl's there now. So it's like, it's a neat little journey across the country in word search form. So, it couldn't have come out at a better time.
Fair enough. So we know that the type of categories you've covered in your Newfoundland and Labrador word searches, because I've seen the book. So give us a couple of examples across the country what you're focusing in on.
Well, I've got, the cities, provinces, capital city mayors, including Danny Breen, of course. I've got premiers, prime ministers. We've got national parks. We've got local businesses. We've got celebrities, the Canadian Dictionary. I've got the Indigenous communities. We've got a whole lot of variety here. It's everything great about this country.
Good for you, Nick. Where can people pick it up if they're so inclined?
Well, they'll be at the Costco here, Chapters, Kohl's. Also, they'll be in Indigo stores across the country. They'll be at the Costco in Dartmouth and Moncton as well. Good
for you. Congratulations. Good luck with it, Nick.
Well, thank you. And I thought you'd like to know VOCM is included there as well.
Perfect. Love to hear it.
All the best, Patty.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. Good luck.
Take care.
Here you go. Nick Cranford with now a Canada word search. The Newfoundland word search turned out to be super popular. Sold a ton of copies. All right, let's check in on the Twitter before we get to the news. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Just to put it out there, and as the emailer points out, there's lots of big issues yet to be discussed, but looking for an update about the proposed multi-recreational facility around Galway. So there was a contract awarded to look at advisory services to see what needs might be. Multiple life services, hockey, curling, turf fields, and all the rest of it. That's kind of gone by the wayside. So is there a status update? Apparently the company that got the contract, Stantec, was supposed to report back months ago. Has that happened? Where are we? Because recreational facilities is part of the conversation. Let's take a break. For those in the queue, stay right there. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Saying more to the Executive Director of the Western Environment Centre. That's Katie Temple. Hi, Katie. You're on the air.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on the show. I forwarded this email off to David to have you on. Tell us what's happening.
Well, we are continuing our permaculture garden workshop series. So for anyone who's not familiar, permaculture is a way of growing, a way of gardening that follows the principles of nature. So there's ways to grow food that actually can contribute to building soil and to contributing to a healthy soil ecosystem. And so as the Western Environment Centre, we're really focused on environmentally responsible growing. And so we're really excited to have a local person. She's a permaculture expert and a certified master organic gardener. So she's been working with us this summer. And now we're having a fall garden workshop. So some people might think, gardening season is over, but there's still plenty to do over the next few months. And so we're having a workshop tomorrow, Wednesday evening, here in Corner Brook to talk about all the things that you can focus on for fall gardening.
Can you just give us a couple of examples to wet people's whistles?
Yes, definitely. So our workshop leader always talks about thinking like a forest. The workshops have all focused on how we can look at nature to figure out what might work best in your garden. So a lot of times it's actually doing things like using natural materials, which are often free, and using those kinds of things, which actually create less work for you as a gardener in the long run. Because if you look at a forest, I mean, if you look at nature, there's no one out there weeding and fertilizing. Everything grows itself. There's a lovely balance there. And so the kinds of things we're going to talk about are pruning. We're going to talk about how to use those kinds of materials that you might find for free, like this time of year, leaves and, old branches and like older plant materials. All of that can be used in your garden as mulch. You can like layer different materials, and that itself will fertilize the plants. And so rather than wait until spring, to get your garden going, it's really important actually to work in the fall to get your garden ready, so that in the spring you can really hit the ground running. So we're going to be talking about, like how to think about all the things that you have going on in your garden now, how to like harvest, how to mulch, how to water, and then we'll have a really good discussion. It'll be very interactive and hands-on as well.
Given what we've seen this past summer, hot and dry, prolonged periods of time, conversations like, dealing with the soil conditions and mulching and moisture, it's probably going to be, the trend is not going to change. We're going to see more of this into the future. So does that make these types of conversations even more important? Because as much as it felt great to have these hot, warm days, very little to no rain, it comes with implications for, large-scale agriculture, or even just your backyard garden.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because we did have quite a long, hot, and dry summer, and in some ways, of course, that's amazing, right? Because a lot of these plants need really good heat, need a lot of sun. But on the other hand, with very little water, and we're not used to that. We slowly have to get used to it here in Newfoundland as the climate is changing, that we may have, these hotter, drier summers. And if we can harness some of these natural principles to preserve water, that really makes a big difference. So, like you said, like using materials to mulch, that's huge for preserving water. If you just have bare, dry soil, that is definitely going to be detrimental to your garden. And if you look anywhere in nature, there's never bare soil. There's always something either covering it or plants growing up. So that's actually one really important foundational principle, of permaculture, is always keeping your soil covered, and that's essential, especially for keeping the moisture in. And that creates its own little microclimate as well. So then, if it's really hot in your garden, the soil temperature, at the surface level might actually be a little bit lower if you have your materials kind of mulch there. So there's a lot of important things, a lot of adaptations, I think, that are important for people to learn as we're seeing some changes in our climate.
Give the folks the details one more time, the where, the when for the workshop.
Okay, so the workshop happens tomorrow. That's Wednesday, September 24th at 6 p.m. RSVP is required because space is limited. Entry is generally $5, but it's free for anybody who's a member of the Western Environment Center. And that's only $20 for the year. And that gets you, membership gets you entry into all of our workshops for free. So anyone who's interested can check out our website. It's wecnl.ca/events. That's wecnl.ca/events. And they can, all the info is there for registering. And it's here in Corner Brook. So I just want to mention that as well. So it's happening here locally at a school greenhouse. So anybody that signs up, I'll send them all the details exactly of where to go, what to bring, all of that. So hopefully we'll see some of your audience members there.
It's good to have you on the show, Katie. Good luck with it.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Katie Temple, Executive Director at the Western Environment Centre. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to one of the candidates running on ward number 4. That's Tom Davis. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning.
I'm going to respect your listeners and not talk anything about council stuff. No council hat on today. Other than I want to mention that this Sunday coming is World Rivers Day, And from a Rotary point of view, the Waterford Valley Roadie, which I'm on, we work hard to keep it clean and to advocate for it. But of course, the rivers and the brooks and the streams all across the province are so important. And we want to emphasize their importance, and everybody just take that time to have a look. And just bear in mind, I know we're seeing a lot of it within Mount Pearl Paradise and St. John's, where we have people that are pushing their snow, pushing gravel, filling in, reclaiming land. And that's totally unacceptable. And these rivers are so important, the life that lives in it, and just the overall for the residents. But it's not legal, but it's also immoral to be harming these rivers, which are the lifeblood of our community.
I remember back in the day, when I was a kid even, things like you could put a piece of heavy equipment out in the pond to dredge out around your wharf. People did all kinds of wild stuff with very little consideration for the environment. And thankfully, obviously, things like that have changed. Tom, let's get into whatever the subject line here that says I can't really make it out.
That's okay. So I had this really interesting conversation last week with a gentleman who was your perceivably very successful family with the big house and the two nice cars. One was leased, one was payments, and with a family, and really, but with a good income on both dual incomes, both doing perceivably really well, but credit cards up to their yin yang, no money in the bank, and they were just like so many people, a week or 2 weeks away from having a big problem if something ever happened. And this was unprompted. I'd made some comment, and he went in to explain that he had listened to this podcast or whatever, this guy Dave Ramsey, who I've listened to before, and I would encourage everybody, including John Hogan and Tony Wakeham, to tune in. This guy who really focuses on getting your affairs in order, and he focuses on your spending, but as well as debt being a really bad thing. Anyways, this guy went on to explain that they sold their big house, they got rid of their cars, their expensive cars, and now they're driving used cars, and they just downsized significantly, and they put themselves on a budget, and how his partner had reached out and said that she was proud because they had a $300 grocery budget, and she had spent $297. There's another story about a son coming saying he wanted money for school, and within the budget there was a very small amount of money, relatively speaking. These are people making really good money. So, this is not your average Newfoundlander even. This would be above average, but I think many people, tell a story. But then he went on to say how the debt is falling away. They have money in their savings account, and the stress was being lifted off their shoulders, off their relationship, and they could see positive impacts on their children as they started to realize that, there is a simpler way of living. And I want to kind of draw a straight line to what's happening right now in our province as I listen to our leaders. It is amazing when you look at the platform of the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals, when the most conservative party is actually the NDP party. There is something wrong, John Hogan, Tony Wakeham, when Tony Wakeham makes the comment he doesn't care about deficits, and John Hogan's going around running on this Upper Churchill future money, which he's got everybody hoodwinked into thinking there's magic money, and there isn't. There's barely enough money to cover the Muskrat Falls fiasco, and we're borrowing from the future. But I mean, to drill down to this, if John Hogan or Tony Wakeham ran their household the way they're running this province, they would be bankrupt pretty quickly, which is the situation that these guys are putting themselves in. I really don't understand how Newfoundlanders and Labradorians can be hoodwinked and can have this mentality that, that there's a free lunch. There's no free lunch. And when you cut taxes or you reduce HST on electrical bills or on, it has to come from somewhere else, or else it's borrowed. I mean, people need to realize that a lot of the numbers that get tossed around by finance ministers are actually disingenuous. I'm not saying they're lying, but they're creative accounting. I mean, I listened to Siobhan Cody, and again, I like her as a person. I don't like her as a finance minister. When she said that the reason they included the tobacco settlement in the budget is because it came in March, just before they did their budget. However, the tariff shenanigans, which was resulting in oil prices being much lower, well, they couldn't include those. So it's selective revenue to make the numbers look better. But people need to realize that from a cash deficit point of view, this year we're going to borrow over $4 billion. Like, I don't know if I know you keep talking about how much $1 billion is. And people talk about they pay their minimum payment on their credit card. Newfoundland doesn't even pay its minimum payment on its debt. It just rolls it all over. And I don't understand how people can't at the door make this. I realize cost of living. I get it. But, over 10 or 11% of the money that we either borrow or we take in taxes, we put back out in debt servicing. And, there has to be a point when we draw a line in the sand. Newfoundland is the most indebted province, but probably the wealthiest province per capita by revenue and by opportunity and potential. And we just seem to do the equivalent to buying the most expensive side-by-side, the biggest house, the biggest truck, when our government is spending money, and always bartering the future of our children and grandchildren against trying to win an election. And it's immoral, and I don't know at what point it's going to end, because it just frustrates me to no end. I lose sleep over it. This morning I was up 5:30 in the morning trying to figure out what words I could possibly use to reach the MHAs who are running and who are in power, so that they could finally have the courage to tell people what they need to tell them and to make difficult choices, so that instead of us continuing this cycle of beg boring, playing poor mouth, begging Ottawa for money, having to do deals with different parties because we're desperate. Because we, remind people, since the Liberals got elected in 2015, twice we almost couldn't make payroll. We had to write, we were that desperate. And just the short memories of both the electorate and the politicians is so frustrating.
Sometimes it absolutely is that. I appreciate the time, Tom. Good luck.
Take care, everyone. Please, everybody get out and vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Quick traffic advisory. I know that was broached in the news, but throw it back out there. So due to a motor vehicle collision, Route 480, which we all call the Burgeo Highway, closed in both directions. So approximately 20 kilometres north of Burgeo. Updates will be provided. When we get them, we'll share them with you. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad. Listen, I never got my ballots for the city election, and everybody in the household got them, and I waited till yesterday thinking that maybe it was in the mail. Am I too late to vote now, or have I got to go to the polling station? Because, I thought it was all mail-in for the city.
It is. So there's a couple of options here. You can just call Access St. John's, and they'll mail out a kit or ensure that there's one on the way, because the deadline to put them back in the mail is Wednesday if you're going to send by mail. But of course, there's satellite drop-off centres on election day itself. So that's your options.
Oh, okay.
Call Access St. John's, and you can actually, on election day, go to one of those satellite drop-in centres with identification, and you'll get a kit to vote right there.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so you're saying dial 311.
Yeah, you can call, or you can just visit Access St. John's portion of the City of St. John's website, and you can deal with them directly. But for anyone who's listening, if you don't have your ballot and you wanted to send it back by mail and the deadline is Wednesday, you still can drop it off at a satellite centre. And if you don't get a ballot up until Election Day, you can simply bring ID, and the same mail-in ballot that we all get, you'll get one right there on the spot, and you can cast your vote there.
Okay, thanks so much. I thought I'd call because I figured I wasn't the only one in this situation. I did get them, in past elections, so I don't know what happened this time.
Me neither.
Maybe
but
it's in the mail today. Who knows?
Well, there's the two options. So you will indeed get an opportunity to vote.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome, Jeff. All the best.
Have a great day.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4. Lisa, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm not too bad. A little bit frustrated, though, this morning.
Is that a good phone line, Dave? No? Awesome. Let's put Lisa on hold, and let's go to line number 2. Kimberly, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay, thank you. How about you?
I'm good.
Good.
Just calling in today in regards to the child tax benefit. I have my 2 grandsons in care, and I filed for the child tax benefit in April. And I sent in all the required documentation that was asked of me. I needed 3 sources of information stating that the children were indeed in my care from July of 2024 to present. So I had a letter from Children's Protection Services I had two letters actually from Children's Protection Services. I had a letter from the worker who took the children from my daughter's home and put them in my care, and I had a letter from the social worker who is on the case right now. I had a letter from Newfoundland and Labrador Housing showing that the children are on the lease, and they have been on the lease since September the 12th of 2024 when we moved into our Newfoundland and Labrador housing unit. I also had a letter from the emergency shelter from the Newfoundland and Labrador housing that placed us in shelter in July of 2024, and we were in shelter until September the 12th. Actually, September the 11th, we moved into the house. September the 12th is the date on the lease. And anyways, I received a letter on September the 10th from the CRA stating that I did not supply sufficient information to say that my grandchildren are in my care. So I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. Or I contacted my grandson's school, and he was in the school, and he has transferred schools since because he was supposed to go back home in March, which didn't happen. Anyway, the school that he was in is telling me that they have no record of him in the school. Hello?
Yeah, I'm just listening. So you and I have gone back and forth on, I guess it's Facebook Messenger, possibly.
Yes, you're familiar with my story, Paddy.
Yeah, I am. And because of it, I did look at the eligibility and qualifications for access to the child tax benefit, or the Canada Child Benefit, and the caregiver credit, which is another thing that you should be eligible for. And the fundamentals are there. You have to be the primary caregiver. The child must be living with you. There's one specific form, I think it was called RC86, if I'm not mistaken, to access the child benefits. And here's what gets me going when we talk about issues regarding CRA in particular, is you get a letter saying that you didn't provide enough or adequate information to prove that you are eligible for these benefits. But what they don't tell you is what you do need to provide.
Right. And when I call them back, when I get them on the phone, and I have gotten them on the phone numerous times, every time I get them on the phone, they tell me that they cannot see my information. They can only see that I have uploaded information. They can only see notes. And I asked them if they can let me talk to somebody that made this decision, and they can't do that. So I'm being told that I will receive a cover letter stating why I don't qualify for the child tax benefit. But in the meantime, the child tax benefit has been taken from my daughter, and she has been told that she owes X amount of dollars. So where is this benefit going to now?
It's a good question. So, again, for any government department, provincially or federally, if people are applying for stuff and you say to them, we need more information, they really owe it to you to tell you exactly what additional information is required here. Not just that, blanket, sorry, you're out of luck.
So I'm guessing. And now they're basically saying, okay, well, maybe the 3 invoices from the club that they were in during the summer, maybe you could send those in. Maybe you can get a doctor's note. Maybe you can go to the school. So I'm saying that's not 3 sources, that's 6.
Yeah.
It's like, is there anybody that you could put me in contact with? Because I've exhausted, my search, and I don't know who to talk to, I have reapplied. I was told to reapply, and I was told to put a letter in and ask them why they denied my benefits for my grandsons. My grandsons have been here with me, and I have been the one taking care of them. I have been the one supplying everything for them. I mean, thank God for Marketplace, because that's where I shop. I shop because I want my grandkids to look good. I want them to feel good. I want them to be happy. And here, Children's Protection Services, they help me out, but the CRA should be doing their business. They should be doing what they're supposed to be doing and put the money where it's supposed to go with the children.
Fair enough. And I hate doing this, but You know, there's a reason why we have people elected to represent you. It's not just about the biggest issues under the sun. It's about these as well. So whoever your member of parliament is, their constituency assistants should be able to help you along here. That's basically what they're there for. So I'm not sure who your MP is, but call their office, explain to them what you've explained to me, and ask for the constituency assistant to help you.
Okay, I will do that, Paddy.
Yeah, it always feels like a cop-out when I suggest that, but once we've run out of other possible avenues, this one is still there, and so take advantage of it. Let me know how it goes. Kimberly, send me a message with an update.
I certainly will. And thank you for your time.
I appreciate yours. Take care. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Because when we exchanged notes, I went and looked at eligibility for the child tax benefit and for the caregiver benefit, and it was pretty clear what eligibility looked like. Sounds to me like Kimberly's provided all the documentation that's been asked for by CRA, but yet here we are. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking the politics of pavement. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let us go. Line number 4. Lisa, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
A little frustrated this morning. You know, I've been calling for about 3 years now regarding the road conditions in Spanish Room and Rock Harbour. So June the 4th, a resident in our area received a letter from, at the time, Minister Elvis Lovelace, talking about they would inspect the road, you know, any major hazards would receive immediate attention. So anyway, July 29th, I sent an email to Minister Lovelace and to Premier Hogan at the time and asked for an update and basically begged for coal patch, gravel, anything that could fill in some of, you know, the road conditions and the potholes, you know, until there could, you know, be a more permanent solution. I received nothing, not an acknowledgement, not a word, not a phone call, nothing, not an email, not, you know, not even if it wasn't the answer I was looking for. I didn't receive a thing. So this is a man who is running again, who cannot respond to people in this province. It frustrates me to no end. 6 o'clock last night, the Liberal candidate for our area posted on Facebook how on his campaign page he posted up the 2 tenders that were awarded yesterday, I do believe, for work in Marystown and on Marine Drive and for the Blackbrook area. Now, earlier this summer, the Blackbrook contract, I think, was canceled. They weren't going to put the tender out for it, and they resurfaced it for the most part. Then all of a sudden, the contract or the tender is back on the table again. So last night, around 6 p.m., the Liberal candidate, you know, put up the big post showing, you know, how the 2 tenders had been awarded, thanking, you know, Paul Plate, thanking the mayor of Bjorn for all their help in getting this done, yada, yada. Like politics to no end. And then to top it all off, Elvis Lovelace comments on the post and says, this was important to you before you were a candidate. You can get things done. So if he could respond to basically a nobody, he's not an elected official, he's nobody right now, he's not the mayor, he's not the MHA, he's not anything, how come he couldn't respond to me? Why is it now that all this pavement is getting done? Why is it right at this moment tenders are being released and they are using it to to benefit themselves in this election, to move the party up forward or whatever it is, when they could not even do ditching in Spanish Room, let alone brush cutting. They went out this summer to Rock Harbour with some coal patch, filled in some bad spots. The backhoe set by the Department of Highways backhoe set by my property for about 2 weeks. Nothing was done in Spanish Room, absolutely nothing. They did do some stuff in Rock Harbour. And if Elvis Lovelace thinks that what him and his colleagues decide is what determines what is immediate attention, what requires their immediate attention. They have not been in Spanish Room. They are not representing the people of this province. And now they are using pavement and politics. And it's just so frustrating when I have been 3 years. Why can't I be listened to? And the petitions we've sent in, the emails we've sent in are like, we're nobodies? Because I'm sure the candidates running right now are nobodies, but they're getting praise for stuff they've done in the past now during an election by colleagues. Like, it's just ridiculous. And our MHA at the time, every Monday morning, he would send an email to Elvis Lovelace asking for an update. He was never acknowledged either. So how could we expect as residents? And they're saying they want to represent us? Seriously? I'm just so frustrated with it. Like, I drive Blackbrook, I drive Marine Drive, and what they are compared to Spanish Room, they're heaven. They're brand new pavement compared to what we have. And these candidates now are using that to further their own political stripes. I'm just frustrated to no end. Frustrated.
And I'll just pick up on the lack of communication piece. I'm worn out saying this too. Look, when people have a question, even if it's not the answer they want to hear, it's better than silence. It always will be that way. But for some reason, look, I'm sure that elected officials at the municipal, provincial and federal level, there's a lot of information, lots of requests and concerns coming in the door, email and otherwise, every single day. I get it. They must be overwhelmed. But they have big staffs and big departments. If someone who's even, I'll say underling, which is not a very flattering thing to say, but someone who's not at the minister's level or assistant deputy minister or deputy, someone can give someone an answer. I mean, let's just get the information flowing. If you say, are we getting any payment in Spanish Room? And the answer is no, well, at least it's no, as opposed to crickets.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know why they do it.
Absolutely. And to say, if there's any major hazards, it will get immediate attention.
Yep.
That's when he was minister. That's what he said. And if anyone, I challenge anyone to drive down through Spanish Room and Rock Harbour and say that there's no areas that need immediate attention. I challenge them. And now to come out and be congratulating a candidate he's nobody right now. He's no different than what I am. It's just that he's putting up signs. He gets praise for tenders being awarded. I don't understand. Did he, as mayor of Marystown, do more advocating than what I did? Or I just don't have the right connections, I guess. That's probably what it is. Yeah,
I don't know. When we talk about the politics of pavement, whether or not it's real or perceived, it's a concern, and people will long have it. Lisa, would you like to say anything else while we have you this morning?
No, that's it, Patty. I'm just frustrated, and I'm sure I'll be phoning again, kicking the same rock.
I look forward to the call.
Take care, Patty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Alfred's in the queue to talk sea cucumbers. Nathan is with the External Affairs at Munsu. We'll talk about the town hall that's coming up. I guess that's Thursday, right, Dave? Yeah, I think so. And Ron wants to chime in on the election. From what angle, we'll find out. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 3. Take more to the Director of External Affairs at Mun Student Union. That's Nathan Gillingham. Nathan, you're on the air.
Hi, Daly. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'll be better when we get a clean phone line. I've got to get that figured out. That's starting to get on my nerves a little bit more. Let's go to line number 6. Alfred, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you. How about you?
I'm not too bad. Patty, I heard you in your earlier this morning mention cucumbers. And I was up there for that protest. Or I don't know, I call it protest, demonstration, whatever it was. And I don't know if people fully realize like the consequences of what could have happened there. Like we had 2 foreign countries, which is what it was. I mean, we got raw Greenland owned by the country of Denmark. We've got St. Pierre harvesters, that's France. We had 2 foreign countries trying to undermine our harvesters here in this province. And to me, that got to be, someone should step up to the plate, the federal government or someone, and make a statement on this. like Carney or whoever, he don't have to be going all around the world looking for conflicts of one country trying to impose their will on another. And I don't mean to put this on the same scale as some of the conflicts around the world, but there's still a principle there. But I haven't heard anything from the federal government about this. I mean, foreign countries.
Yeah, it's really not necessarily a federal government issue. It was a private company picking and choosing a foreign fleet to buy from. All of the authority regarding processing licenses in this province is under the authority of the provincial government, and that's where we need to hear something. So whether it be the minister or... Pardon?
I don't mean just wait, but there is a federal implication there because the federal government control all of Royal Greenland's fishing licenses, their harvesting licenses, all part of the big package. If they didn't have those licenses to harvest on their own boats, they wouldn't even be here set up in business. So one really enables the other one to proceed.
Well, controlling agreements have already been... All right, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Controlling agreements have already been deemed illegal in the court, so I don't even know why that's still a thing. The processors are not allowed to operate a boat for their own specific purposes by using a proxy fish harvester. I mean, it was decided in court. Yet we hear the conversation come up repeatedly. But my point is that those boats are allowed in the waters. That's the federal implication. I think the control of the licenses is where I would start if I was a fish harvester, is because the province can control the license. If someone doesn't abide by the rules in said license, there can be repercussions. But we haven't heard a single peep.
No, and I agree with you, Paddy, and I wasn't trying to undercut what you were trying to say.
No, that's okay. It's your time. Your time.
I lost my train of thought there for a second. But see, and another point, this wasn't entirely about cucumbers per se. This was about trying to undermine the bargaining process that we rely on for all our species. If this had been allowed to go ahead, next year it would have been crab. Certain companies of ASP or whoever would say, well, look, the negotiated price of cucumbers last year was 69 cents a pound. Well, we got them for 50 cents a pound. And if those boats had been able to continue landing, well, the pressure then was on our guys and women to go fishing and harvest cucumbers because St. Pierre has almost enough quota on their own to fill that market. So if those cucumbers were allowed to go on the market for a cheap price, well, next year you'd be starting off at 50 cents a pound. You would never get nothing for it. Like, and it would have spread to other species. It would have been crab next year. It would have been lobster next year. Like, it was trying to break our price setting mechanism, which is far from perfect. Don't get me wrong, but the price was set by the panel, and it was supported by provincial market data. So, I don't think, like you said earlier, either level of government or provincial especially, anyone has come out really and made much of a comment on it. Like, we always get comments during elections. Oh, we support you. But when it hits the fan, like, there's very rarely anyone actually steps up, and that's what I'm afraid of here. Like, is this going to just die or pass, and are we going to be in the same boat again next year?
That's the question I'm asking, because it has a ripple effect, right? If Royal Greenland can do it and get away with it, other small processors are going to try the same thing. Why? Because there's more money in their pocket. It's just the nature of the beast in business. If you can make more money, you're probably going to do an awful lot of things nudging up against the rules and or the law to make more money. And secondly, your next point is 100% true. If it's not going to stop at sea cucumbers, why would it? If all of a sudden it becomes standard practice, then guaranteed, especially when we're talking much bigger dollars if you add in snow crab, then this becomes an issue that can snowball. I don't know why we're not hearing more about it. I'm actually really surprised. People talk about trying to get support for rural voters. Well, a lot of the issues in rural, economically speaking, can be tied directly or indirectly to the fishery.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still the driving force of rural Newfoundland, and there's a lot of money tied up to it. One of the responses, I think, from the provincial Liberal government, which was released this morning, was that no rules were broken. Well, we're going to look into it, but as of now, there was no rules broken. Well, I mean, that's kind of scary into itself. If there's no rule prohibiting someone coming in from the outside and selling product into the same market that we are, landing it here in this province to the detriment of our harvesters, well, I mean, maybe there's something that should be put in place. to prevent this. If you're going to do business here in Newfoundland, follow the same rules that we got to follow.
Sure. And I mean, the fact that technically no rules were broken is pretty thin gruel. The fact of the matter is the protesters kept a rule from being broken. So the next comment needs to be, we expect our processors operating with provincial licenses will abide by the spirit of the panel negotiated price and no further and no other opportunities to buy at any other price from a foreign fleet, the end.
Exactly, Paddy. And before I go, and thank you for your time again, I'd just like to say big thank you to everyone that was up there that day. Everybody kept it civil. There was no damage done. And I call it the best possible outcome we could have. And like I said, I just wanted to thank everybody. That's all. Because there was people showed up there. They were not harvesters. There were harvesters showed up there. They had no cucumber licenses. But everybody pulled together. And that's what we need.
Fair ball. Appreciate the time, Alfred. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's see if we have a better phone line with Nathan Gillingham, the Director of External Affairs at Munsu, on line 4. Nathan, you're on the air.
Paddy, how are you? Happy to be back.
Great to have you. I'm doing fine. How about you?
Oh, doing good. Yeah, so as the Director of External Affairs for the Memorial University Student Union, I have the pleasure of being the co-chair of the Coalition of Unions, which is a coalition of all student and labor unions on campus. And to my understanding, it's one of the biggest union collectives in the province. And I'm calling today to advertise our leaders' election town hall, which will be on Wednesday, September 24th. So that's tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for a 7 p.m. start. And that'll be in the Bruno Center at the St. John's campus. We have it moderated by Adam Walsh, CBC's host of The Signal. And Patty, I'd just like to say, in a time where we're seeing unprecedented changes at the university, we're seeing a bunch of layoffs, and I'm pretty sure every single local representative in the coalition has felt this, layoffs that is. And in a time we're seeing unprecedented cost of living crisis, tuition is going up, students are feeling that they're actively getting less for their money. So, of course, we're really happy to invite politicians here to talk about these really important issues. Memorial University is incredibly important to Newfoundland and Labrador. It was essential to its development, and it continues to be so. There are 60,000 alumni across the province. We are genuine stakeholders this election. I just want to emphasize that. We represent over 20,000 members, and none of them are happy, Patty. Not workers, not students, and certainly not the taxpayer. So I just wanted to call it. Sorry.
I was just going to say, give us a couple of specific areas that you hope are going to be addressed in the town hall.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so from a student perspective, we absolutely hope that the issue of unpaid work terms is addressed. And this is something that two of the political parties have made announcements on leading up to this election. Patty, did you know that pharmacy students work over 1,800 hours totally unpaid? This is a problem across many faculties: education students, social workers, pharmacy, nursing. None of them get paid for their work terms. There are faculties that do pay for work terms, such as engineering, but this isn't evenly felt, and students are looking for answers on this. We had a social media post a couple of days ago that went a little viral. We had a lot of engagement from across the country, even calling attention to this issue of unpaid work terms. Students are looking simply to get paid for their labor, and we really hope that all political parties will form a position on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I talk about the critical importance of the K-12 and the post-secondary institutions, because if we're being realistic here, our success in education is going to be one of the key factors in long-term prosperity, long-term viability in this province. And to argue against it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because if your concerns lie with the economy and taxes and jobs and criminal justice and the healthcare system and the environment and if we get education right, you address those things, pragmatically speaking. So we've just got to try to get on the same page with that one, because I get when people say, what's your concern? Well, my job, my taxes, my money, my health, the crime. And look, I get all that, and they're all obviously important, but we address those pretty seriously when we do well in education. Nathan, I'll give you the floor for the last minute before I have to get to the news.
Yeah, Absolutely, Patty. I totally agree. I just want to emphasize that if we're talking about fixing the problems in this province, we absolutely need to be investing in the future. And yeah, I absolutely agree that it starts with education, in this case, post-secondary education. So I'll just say one more time, we're hosting a Leaders Election Town Hall on post-secondary education. That's tomorrow, Wednesday, September 24th. 6:30 p.m. for a 7 p.m. start in the Bruno Center on the St. John's campus. We hope to see you there. Thanks
Appreciate
so much, Patty.
Thanks, Nathan. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nathan Gillingham is the Director of External Affairs at Monsu. Let's take a break. For those of you in the queue, stay right there. We're going to talk nurse practitioners, the election in general, the mackerel fishery, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to one of the board members at the Schizophrenia Society of Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Liz Rowe. Liz, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. I just wanted to come on today to share about an event that the Schizophrenia Society is hosting tomorrow night, if that's okay.
Sure, but before we get to that, can we just look back a little bit and talk about the family recovery journey that we promoted back, I guess, sometime in the summer? How'd that go?
It went really well, actually. It was our first hybrid event, so we had people join in from online and in person, and we gave out a survey afterwards to see how people found it and got really overwhelmingly positive feedback. So, yeah, it was a great success.
Glad to hear it. And now I didn't mean to sidetrack you. Let's get into what's happening tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. So we're hosting a community barbecue tomorrow night from 6 to 9 p.m. at the North Bank Lodge at Pippi Park. We wanted to host something that's a little bit different than what we typically do. We're often focused on sort of education and those types of events, but we wanted something that can sort of bring people together. There's going to be free food, provide a sense of community. So that was kind of our goal with this event. And so we're hosting that tomorrow night and would love for anyone and everyone to come out.
Will there be, I guess if people show up, then they can do as they see fit insofar as sharing personal stories, whether it be, looking back at the family recovery journey or anything else in the envelope. Is there anything that you'd like for people to bring with them, whether it be a donation or awareness or topics or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I think nothing in particular that people need to bring other than just sort of, ready to mingle with other people, get to know people, learn about the Schizophrenia Society. It's going to be a fairly low-key event. We will have some speakers just say a few words and perhaps a family member sort of share a few sentences about, their involvement with the Schizophrenia Society and those types of things. But yeah, it'll be fairly low-key. There's no expectation that there's a donation, but we will, of course, have information about how people can donate if they would like to.
Would it be fair for me to say that something like this, as low-key, a community barbecue, is that so many families and or individuals that have a schizophrenia diagnosis sometimes feel very isolated, and something as fundamental as just socializing might kind of get left by the wayside after diagnosis?
Absolutely, yeah, and we do see that often, whether it's due to stigma or symptoms of the illness itself. People do find themselves isolated at times. So this is something that, we're inviting absolutely everyone, and it's free. So I think this is a way for people to kind of, decrease their isolation and get to know other people and have some open dialogue about schizophrenia, thereby kind of reducing stigma and all that.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. You can give the details one more time, Liz.
Sure, yeah. So it is tomorrow from 6 to 9 p.m. at the North Bank Lodge at Pippi Park. It's going to be a mixture of indoor and outdoor depending on the weather. We do ask that people RSVP, and if they could do so by today with any dietary restrictions. So the email is susan.hyde, so that's susan.hyde@nlhealthservices.ca. And then, it's free, so come on out. We'll have games. We'll have, like I said, a few informal speakers, but it's really just a chance to get to know other people and have some discussions around schizophrenia.
I appreciate your time, Liz. Thanks for doing it. Good luck with the event.
Thanks. Perfect. Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Liz Rowe, she's on the board at the Schizophrenia Society. Let's roll. Line number 1. Ron, you're on the air.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
Good. Patty, I just wanted to mention on the news last night, you had a story about the Premier's office in Grand Falls, Windsor, and how useful it was and so on. I think the Conservatives were saying one of the things they would shut down. And, when they opened an office in Grand Falls, Windsor, I was delighted. We're going to have this direct pipeline to the Premier, and I thought we could see something get done here. That office to me has been a big disappointment. For an example, they started to, I won't use the word cannibalize, they started to strip down a lot of the services in Central Health in Grand Falls. We don't have a radiologist anymore. We always had 4. We got none now and so on. That office was dead silent on probably the most important issue in Grand Falls, Windsor. Not only Grand Falls, Windsor, but the South Coast. That office, as you know, services Harbour, Breton, Con River, Hermitage, Seal Cove, Fortune Bay, and so on. And that office was just totally dead silent. Is it worth $250,000 a year to keep it there? I got my doubts. I'm wondering if that $250,000 couldn't be better spent somewhere else. And I just thought I'd offer a different opinion from the one I saw in the news story last night.
Yeah, I think it's always worth questioning the expenses, whether or not it's worth it, whether or not it's actually going to hit the sweet spot by, granting greater access to constituents as far afield as Central. Like, I don't know. When I heard the story about it opening, I kind of didn't really know whether or not it made a whole lot of sense. Like, opening the office in Boston, that to me makes sense. Opening a Premier's office in the same province, albeit 400 kilometres down the road, I don't really know. And if it's not living up to expectation, then I guess it's worthwhile revisiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other question I have in my mind is that, if you're opening a Premier's office in Grand Falls so you can have a communications with the Premier, then what's the MHA's job? It seemed like you're duplicating a service. And maybe there are other reasons for opening. Maybe it's political or something. I won't suggest that could have been. But no, to my mind, that really needs to be re-examined.
Yeah, and not to nitpick your point, but of course, if the government is held by, let's say, for instance, now currently the Liberals, and the surrounding MHAs in Central might be some Tories, then it is indeed increased access to actual government. But whether or not it's actually fulfilling much of anything, whether or not it's meeting expectations that were stated by the Liberals themselves, it's a fair question, because every dollar counts these days.
Yeah, and that's another $250,000 could go towards the hospital, for an example, or go towards, whatever government services. But I'd like to bring up a second point, if I can. If
sure, you can.
Tom would let me.
Go ahead.
The Grand Falls was founded in 1905. Built a paper mill here and served the world markets and all of that for 100 years. When Abitibi Bowater were going to shut it down, their intention was to shut the mill and sell off a 114 meg power system and some a million square kilometers of forest rights. The government of the day took all of that. They just grabbed it, so that the company couldn't sell it. That was a good decision, and at the time I was involved, I supported the decision. Shut it down and take it from the company who was going to sell it to some foreign entity to raise money for themselves. They were in money trouble. And the power project sits there today, and it generates whatever amount of revenue. Now, that power project never cost the Newfoundland government 5 cents, thank God. What had happened was they grabbed it. Abitibi Bowater protested under the NAFTA rules, and the federal government paid Abitibi $130 million compensation. But that project is sitting there today. It's a good power project, and it's running. And it was, when it was built originally in design, it was done for Grand Falls. And as a result of that project, Grand Falls was one of the first towns outside of St. John's to have paved roads, which was a gift to the province. Like, all of Grand Falls was built without assistance from the province at the time, which was great. But today I look at it and I'm saying to myself, should the town of Grand Falls, Windsor be, to whatever extent, in partnership on that power project? Shouldn't that power project, to some extent, benefit Grand Falls, Windsor? It's not a power project that the government built, in the same way other projects were.
It's a good question. I mean, I'm so glad you brought up that expropriation of the Abitibi mill. That was rushed through the legislature in an afternoon. And inadvertently, the government expropriated it. So the $130 million paid by the federal government was to settle a NAFTA complaint filed by Abitibi. And at the exact same time, we inherited all the environmental cleanup. That estimated cost in and around $100 million. We actually paid $70 million to other partners regarding the hydroelectric assets. So that cost between the feds and the province in the neighborhood of $200 million, or more than that, almost $300 million, because we just didn't take our time and know what the hell we were voting on.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, the way it was done. Yeah, we inherited all of that. Now, if this thing is pumping out $60 million a year or whatever, it would probably turned out to be a great investment. I do know that the province received a percentage from the company that demolished the mill and sold off all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tons of scrap metal, and the province has gained on that. But if you look at that power project and you put into that the power station of Bishop Falls, Buckins, and Star Lake, even if you paid that much money for it, you just put bargain basement prices for that project that will run forever. If it's looked out to, and it is being looked out to as I understand it. But I think the communities like Grand Falls, Windsor, and Bishop Falls should somehow be partnered into power projects that was in their community, that helped their communities prosper for 100 years. And I'd like for the candidates to at least sit down with those communities, strike up a committee, and look at the benefit of doing that. That money won't be leaving Newfoundland. If there's a partnership there and that money goes to, or part of that money goes to those communities, it'll be spent right here in Newfoundland, but it'll probably end up going to small and medium-sized business more than anything else.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me, and it sounds completely fair. Now, the rationale for the expropriation is that the water rights and the timber rights could have been held by an entity outside of the province, which I suppose is true, but it came with a variety of other implications. Ron, good to have you on the show. Enjoyed that chat. Anything else you want to say?
No, you're right. Yeah, that was the idea of the expropriation. They did, I think, 5 mills in Quebec and 4 in Ontario. And because I was quite involved at the time, and when the government of Newfoundland expropriated that, the reaction in Ontario from the Ontario government was never thought about it, would have done it. And so Newfoundland actually came out of all the Abitibi mills across the country. Newfoundland actually came out on the better side of that deal by doing the expropriation, in my opinion. Like I said, I was involved at the time. From where I sat, that was much more the better deal.
Yeah, fair enough. It's just that we kind of found out after the fact what some of the implications were, which are probably should be considered before we vote on things like that. It's good to have you on, Ron. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. You too. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye.
All right, just going to break in when we come back. Nurse practitioners, mackerel, whatever you want to talk about. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Ray, you're on the air.
Good morning, Betty.
Morning.
Calling about the mackerel fishery now.
Yep.
Or the lack of mackerel fishery, I should say. They've got that Atlantic mackerel fishery pretty well closed down.
Yeah, it's just a bait fishery.
Or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And this summer, from Labrador back up to right around the island, there's millions and millions and millions and millions of mackerel, all the biggest kind. There's billions and billions of market for it, worth a fortune. And we haven't heard a word from our union, our politicians, or anyone on the island. Like, this is new money that will come to the province, the same as crab money. And we haven't heard a word from anyone to put up a protest to see can we get this fishery back and get it open.
It's a fair ball. I mean, mackerel is what they call a straddle stock. The Americans never had a moratorium on it. Then now they had a much decreased total allowable catch on the mackerel, but they still had a commercial mackerel fishery. We had none. We had the moratorium. Now we have a bait fishery, and apparently we're late to the game in the mackerel bait fishery too, so it's simply not working.
No, and it's ridiculous because this fish is the same fish that they catch down in the States.
It is.
We've had people years ago from buddies of mine that went there and fished on the boats and the way they catch it in the winter. It's the same mackerel. But to add insult to injury, we've also got a breeding stock of mackerel here in the island now. You can find the tours in the fall of the year with little mackerel in them like 1.5 inches and 2 inches long. This summer, mackerel have been rolling up on the beaches in Conception Bay and pretty well everywhere. So I don't know, is our union gone to sleep, or is everybody just so pleased with the crab fishery we don't need anything else? Or I find it very strange that our government, looking for a way, they talk about hydro development and they talk about minerals, when right there on our doorstep is a fish that brings in brand new money, and the rest of the world is crying for the mackerel. It's the most healthiest thing you can eat.
I'm trying to recall whether or not we heard anything from the FFAW on this. I believe so. Dwan was on, but I think her main concern was priority to go at it for bait as opposed to the need for reinstatement. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but the union did call about mackerel. I just can't remember exactly what they said.
No, nothing, Pat. Nothing in the regards. You're talking a fishery that could have put millions of dollars in the plant workers and the fishermen and the economy here in the island. But seems like crab is king and nobody wants to look at it. I guess only Mr. Barry. He's been pushing it all summer, but he hasn't got anywhere with it to get it open. But I had to call in this morning to say that, we're really getting very lax, and I blame our union for it. They're the people that have to speak up, and there's no good at speaking up in December. I see we had an announcement on shrimp yesterday that a reopening in Triel for shrimp for the large fleet and the small fleet. And they were touting that it was a big win because it was made a worldwide agreement for us to let us. Imagine, the world told us that we can catch our own shrimp. What a win that was.
Yeah. And in addition to that, I think this is an accurate recall. There isn't even specific science in the mackerel fishery. Is that a fact? Do you know that to be true?
That is quite true.
Wow.
So I'll put it out there. I don't think we'll get any response from it in that. And the union will fall asleep again there until the crab fishery opens again next spring. And we might hear tell us something then on it, I guess.
We're happy to talk about it on this show, Ray. I appreciate you making time. Anything else before we say goodbye?
No, glad that somebody, at least is a place we can express an opinion. Somebody might hear it, and we might get a little rustle in the feathers on us.
Let's hope so. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah. Imagine the moratorium, the bait fishery, and yet I don't think there's mackerel-specific science being conducted. I'm pretty sure that's what the union said. And, incorporating scientific compilation of data, sentinel fishery and otherwise, and the need to incorporate anecdotal data and what the fellas and the women on the water actually see, because mackerel is interesting on that front. There's plenty of species that you can't tell by looking at the water if they're there, but mackerel teem right at the surface of the water. And people send me videos all the time of just how much mackerel is in the bay, and yet they're sitting there looking at it, waiting for a chance to go at it just for a bit of bait. Anyway, let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Caller, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The reason I phoned in is I got a question for Mr. Hogan, the leader of the Liberal Party, and all the candidates that's trying to get elected now. If the Liberal Party, if they do form the government, my question is, are they still going to investigate why they wasted so much money on the traveling nurses?
I don't know. I can't answer that question specifically. But, when we talk with NL Health Services and we speak with the Auditor General about these things, then apparently there's been additional guardrails put in to try to reduce our reliance, but that doesn't answer the question as to how it got away from us in the first place.
Right. And to me, if they get in and they forgets about it, it's not saying very much for them. And like, I think people should know that before the election is done, because why would you vote for people that's committing fraud?
Yeah, no.
And don't do nothing about it. And they're out now giving money. They're out handing out money every day that they don't have. And if they kept a bit of rain on when they were in, they'd have money. But now we're going in the hole and in the hole every day.
Yeah, now in the terms of fraud, I think the allegations there are that the companies may have committed acts of fraud as opposed to the government.
Somebody should be responsible, though, and they should be held accountable for what they're doing, right?
Yes, I agree. I think the one notable company the government has parted ways with, but when there's reference to fraud coming from the Auditor General, is that the companies were submitting invoices. And I'm not forgiving anyone at government. They've got to be a bit more careful with my money and your money. But when the companies are submitting invoices for things that never even happened, and for rental vehicles for people that weren't even here, then that is a problem. The biggest problem inside of government was the possibility that there were registered nurses that could have been hired, and they weren't, and people who had those decision-making authority, they hired travel nurses and then rented them their own private property. So that's the problem inside of government insofar as, we can talk about the money. Of course we can and we will, but it's that concept of people purposefully hiring travel nurses so they can rent them private rental property. That is madness.
And maybe the private rentals that they got could have been owned by people in the government themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was part of the reference.
And like I say, and if they don't put a handle on it, it's going, like they should spend the government's money like they're going to spend their own.
If that was only the case, we'd be so much further ahead, wouldn't we?
We'd have lots of money. We'd be, we're laughing stock of the world because we got so much and we end up with nothing.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we're the laughing stock of the world, but we certainly can and should have been doing better on a variety of fronts. I mean, I think that's fair to say about government everywhere, is that they behave like they don't have any responsibility to carefully manage money, when that's their number one goal: carefully manage the money, because it's not your money. Government doesn't have any money.
If we could only get people that's sensible and honest and all that stuff in the government, what a wonderful place it would be.
It'd be utopia, wouldn't it? I certainly appreciate your time. Would you like to say anything else?
No, that's all. I just hope that if people remembers what they done, they probably won't even get elected. But if they get elected, they should still carry on and investigate what went wrong in the first place.
Fair enough. Can't argue that point.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
listening to me.
My pleasure.
Bye.
All the best. Bye-bye. Let's go to line number what, Dave? Line number 4? Line number 4, say good morning to one of the candidates running at large here in the city. That's Miles Russell. Miles, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I wanted to chat about, actually, before we get into anything like that, I want to remind people that tomorrow is the mail-in drop-off deadline for Canada Post mailboxes. But if you miss it, it's no big deal. Their city has 6 satellite drop-off locations where you can drop off your ballot, and you can still vote on Election Day on October 2nd next week. Just want to remind people of that.
Yep.
And the polling is open between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. on Election Day on October 2nd. But what I'm talking about, what I'm calling about, is I want to talk about a massive series of infrastructure issues that the city has no plan to address, and if we don't get ahead of it, taxes will have to go up, and I want to get ahead of this. This is kind of the basis of my platform.
Where are we going?
What I want to talk about is the assessments, the city's assessment of regional water sources and the water system master plan. Those two things get into several multi-$100 million projects, including Riverhead treatment expansion, the fact that Babel's system at its current rate of usage can't really expand too much. A large chunk of the primary pipes are at age, including the CBS break we had a couple weeks ago. That's all part of a massive multi-$100 million replacement project and an expansion project. And also, a large chunk of our city, if we have more than 2 major fires, our water pressure drops in about a third of the city. So the fire departments, the fire chief, and as I've chatted to them, inside these plans talked about that if we have 2 or more major fires, we're at a serious risk of not being able to fight a third. This is also hundreds of millions of dollars of repairs, and the city has no active plan address any of this. So I want to talk about solutions on what the reason, again, like why I talk so much about changing the way the city develops.
Yep.
Yeah, so to start with all this, essentially the way the city is currently developing is a very big suburban sprawl push. It's continuing to spread out in a very low density type of development system that we know doesn't work. It's fiscally, essentially every house we continue to spread out further with, spreads our limited resources out more and more, kicks the can of maintenance down the road, and we get to a point where we already have water mains cracking every couple of weeks now. We have fractures happening all over the city. This is going to continue to get worse and worse as about half of our city's water mains are over 60 years old, and a little chunk, about 10%, are like 80, 90 to 100 years old, including like active old ductile iron put in like the early 1900s. This stuff is, again, very expensive to fix, and the city doesn't have a plan. What I want to do is change the focus of the way the city designs or the way it develops and do it in a way that addresses the housing crisis. And there's only one way that's proven to do it, and that's with these, we need to do high density in areas that are really low value commercial spaces. This is what I've been talking about a lot with people, and essentially it boils down to, if we have a limited pool of revenue for, saying, snow clearing and garbage collection and water services, if we sprawl out, we're spreading that out. But if we build dense where there's already roads, like say the old Village Mall area, giant parking lot spaces around these commercial districts on our main roads, these are the perfect spots to replace with like community focused, transit oriented development. This can address the housing crisis and, more importantly, get a lot of revenue for the city so we can start replacing these major critical infrastructure failures.
Yeah, I mean, the water pressure one, where does the solution begin with that? Because I'm not so sure I even understand how you can up water pressure if indeed there was two major fires and the water were required to suppress them. So can you fill me in once again on that?
Yeah, so essentially, Patty, we have a large chunk of the downtown core. The pipes are not just old, but they're undersized. The city's also been doing a lot of these relining projects where they're fixing the pipe structurally, but it does decrease the inside diameter, and that's fine. It's extending the longevity of the pipes, but it's not helping with the pressure issue. So we also have major roads like La Merchant and other ones where the pipes need to be replaced anyway. If we're doing that, that should be replaced in a way that promotes higher density in the area to ensure we're building for future expansion in mind. And that's not the current plan. It's not the way the city is currently handling zoning. The current mess of zoning is some folks that are on council are blaming the St. John's Act when we have a lot more control over how we develop than they're giving credit for. And we should be planning, even if it takes a bit of work with, Department of Municipal Affairs, and that if we got to do a bit more, finagling on how we fund our own projects. If we don't get ahead of this and then we start to want to develop higher density in the future, well, then we have to tear the road up again. So I want to make sure what we're doing does meet our newer standards. And we have, again, a lot of the city needs replacement. And for example, in the downtown core, this giant chunk of pipes that we have that are not just the pressure, not just the water mains, but also our combined sanitary and storm. If we have a giant rainfall, it does stink a bit like sewage, because the pipes that are on the side of the road for the drains are the same as where all of our toilet water goes in a large chunk of downtown. They only got one project on the slate to repair this, and that's the Empire Avenue extension. Basically, they're fixing up Empire Avenue's pipes. That's a multi-year project that's a couple tens of millions of dollars, and that is just 2 or 3% of what needs to happen in the grand terms, in the grand scheme of things. And again, the city's current way it develops doesn't address the housing crisis. If all we build are $500,000 homes 20 kilometers away from the city core and jobs, that's not helping people who don't have the income to buy that, or seniors who want to downsize, or young families who are just starting off. And the way the city is developing is hurting people. And I don't want to butter up. We know we're in a housing crisis. Everyone can see it plain as day, and to deny it is a fool's errand, I think.
I mean, I talk about the way we develop and build up, not out, and, trying to make the differentiation between not every housing unit is created equal. There are different things. So, if we're going to just continue relying on the historical single detached home, we are going to miss the boat. We just are. So I think we're on side on that particular topic, Miles. Before I run out of time here, I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, so I just want to expand again just a little bit more, is that we see other cities doing this. When people often say we can't do transit-oriented, development that's community-focused, yes, we can. Like even in Canada, Montreal and Toronto are knocking it out of the park with developments that are they're increasing the revenue of the city a lot, and it's also really hitting the housing crisis. Like that's why they're seeing less rent and mortgage increases year over year and quarter over quarter than us. We're not building anything. And again, if all we build are giant homes that the vast majority of us can't afford, that's not sustainable. And we need to change that. And we cannot blame the St. John's Act. We have a lot more power inside our own development regulations, and the way we have terms set up in there and the way the zones are connected. And, essentially we have a very complicated system for a very small city. Like 70 plus zones, that's way more than Toronto has. And Toronto's a city of millions of people. And we have way more terms of like hair salon is a separate term in our zoning regulation. So if you're saying about hair salon, you got to go through 70 zones, find where you got to go. It's complicated. It's unnecessary. That needs to change. We can do a lot of things without going to the provincial government. That's what I want to focus on. That's the only way we can address housing and not raise taxes. If we do not change the way the city develops, that's going to happen. I want to avoid that.
I appreciate the time, Miles. Wish you good luck.
Thank you so much, Paddy, and as always, lovely chatting.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. It's Miles Russell, running at large in town. Let's take our final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Kimberly, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How you doing?
Good. There's an ongoing injustice in the town of Harbour Grace, and the public deserves to know the truth based on facts and not hearsay. For over 2 years, a non-compliant deck and pool have been sitting directly on my legal water and sewer easement. This has left us without safe water, caused extreme stress, and forced us into legal fees that amount to approximately $20,000 so far. Despite clear orders and regulations, the town has refused to act. They are avoiding answering questions, and accountability has been completely ignored. At a recent public council meeting, the mayor blamed me for disrupting officials' lives rather than addressing the violations affecting my family. The silence from those responsible, municipal officials, mayor, councillors, is unacceptable. I am asking them to come forward and explain their actions and inactions, an answer to me and to the people of Harbour Grace. My family has suffered long enough, and the community deserves transparency. It's time the truth come out, as I still have no access to my municipal water and sewer lines. Paddy, if municipal officials and managers can ignore rulings and delay enforcement and escape accountability, what confidence can the public possibly have in their leadership? It's just not right. They need to come out and answer the questions as to what exactly is going on here. But I can't get that. They won't come forward. They won't talk to me. They won't address my concerns and issues. They're not complying to their own rules and regulations. They've been ordered, removal orders and stop work orders, and it's all being ignored. While, my family is being denied safe and clean, reliable access to our water supply.
Before we go any further, exactly what's happening to deny you access?
So there's a non-compliant deck built over my water and sewer easement.
This is that story. Okay, right.
And the town issued 2 non-compliant permits. They issued one back in 2017. So 2023 was when I had a water leak. I spent 5 months on a fire hydrant for water supply. So, I had no choice but to get legal involved. And so the deck was removed for me to fix my lines. But then approximately 6 months later, in the spring of 2024, the town issued the fire chief another non-compliant permit. And I appealed it, and a stop work order was put in place. And within 2 hours, the town gave permission for this man to continue working, and he whole debt again in 2 days. So here we are. We've been to several appeal hearings, court appearances, you name it, and there's nobody doing anything. The town is not enforcing their own rules and regulations, and it's at my family's expense. And somebody needs to step out to the public and explain, because, I can only go on social media and tell the story, because I'm after, trying to contact every news media possible. And I don't understand why I can't get anybody to do this story and help us. I just don't understand it. It's inhumane. If a family who has to hook garden hoses up to a fire hydrant for 5 months with, possible contamination, and the town is not even concerned. They just totally ignore me. That is unacceptable. And Mayor Dan Coombs will not come out in public. I'm after posting on social media challenging the mayor and the councillors to come forward and tell the people and explain to me how this happened, because I still don't know why or how this happened, because it's just...
Well, that seems fair.
Right.
Just an explanation of why it's happened is probably a good starting point. Because of the time on the clock, Kimberly, you've had the last word, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paddy,
You're
so
welcome.
much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. And yes, we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.